What if I told you that one of the most famous actors alive today, an actor who wore the cape of Superman, fought monsters as the Witcher, and stood on the edge of some of Hollywood's biggest blockbusters, wasn't known for his luck, but for his bad luck? That behind the red cape and the perfectly carved jawline hides a story of rejection after rejection, of roles slipping through his fingers, and of a career that often looked doomed right before it finally broke open. We're talking about Henry Cavill, the man many fans see as the very definition of a Greek god brought to life. But Hollywood insiders have another name for him: the unluckiest actor in Hollywood. Why? Because time and again, Cavill found himself just inches away from roles that could have changed his career overnight. James Bond, Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter, Edward Cullen in Twilight, only to watch them go to someone else. Each near miss could have been the end. And yet somehow, Cavill kept coming back. But here's where it gets fascinating. Henry's story isn't just about the roles he lost. It's about what he became because of them. Instead of being another polished Hollywood product, he's carved out a unique space. A man as comfortable in a gym as in front of a camera, as passionate about gaming and Warhammer figurines as about acting, and as relatable as your regular bro neighbor. Despite being Superman. In this video, we're diving deep into Cavill's roller coaster career, from being mocked as Fat Cavill in his school days, to training himself into the kind of shape that made directors rethink what a leading man should look like. We'll uncover the heartbreaking roles that slipped away, the brutal choices Hollywood forced on him, and the unexpected way he built one of the most loyal fan bases in the world. From the outside, it's easy to imagine Henry Cavill as someone destined for greatness, a man who looked like he was carved out of marble, born to wear a superhero's cape. But the truth is very different. Before the bright lights of Hollywood, Cavill was just a shy, overweight kid growing up on the small island of Jersey, tucked between England and France. Far from Hollywood glamour, he was known at school not as the handsome one or the star in the making, but by a cruel nickname, Fat Cavill. That name hurt, and it stuck, but instead of crushing him, it planted a seed. Because here's the irony: without those years of insecurity, Cavill might never have built the iron discipline that would later define him. Think about it. The man famous for his sculpted physique started out mocked for his body. That's not just a transformation, it's a story of grit, rejection, and the refusal to let others write your ending. The first flicker of possibility came in 2000, when teenage Henry landed a tiny role in Proof of Life. You'd miss him if you blinked, but what mattered wasn't the role. It was the moment. On that set, Henry met Russell Crowe, then at the height of his fame, after Gladiator. Most teenagers would have begged for an autograph. Cavill, he asked Crowe what it was really like to be an actor. That bold question changed everything. A few days later, Henry received a package, a signed Gladiator poster, and a handwritten note from Crowe that read, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." It's almost poetic when you look back. That single step, one small role, one encouraging note, ignited the fire that would carry Cavill through years of heartbreak and rejection. Crowe became his hero, and acting became his mission. But if you think the story took off smoothly from there, you'd be wrong. Cavill's early path was rocky, full of contradictions. He joined drama clubs, but acting wasn't yet his whole life. He considered the military, dabbled in sports, and tried to figure out who he was. And yet, somewhere in the background, that poster from Crowe was whispering, "Keep going," determined to leave Fat Cavill behind. Henry transformed himself. He shed more than 40 pounds, not with Hollywood trainers or secret regimens, but through sheer willpower. Imagine being a teenager, pushing through insecurity, carving yourself into someone new before you ever step foot on a real set. That's what Henry did, and soon enough, it paid off. His first real leading role came in Laguna, 2001, a little-known Italian-Canadian thriller. The film itself faded into obscurity. But for Henry, it was a trial by fire. One scene paired him with Emmanuelle Seigner, wife of Roman Polanski, in his very first on-screen intimate moment. Nervous and inexperienced, he struggled until Seigner half-jokingly suggested he have a drink to calm his nerves. It was awkward, surreal, and very telling of what his early years would be like. Moments of huge pressure, faced long before he was ready, with only his determination to carry him through. Then, in 2002 came The Count of Monte Cristo. Cavill played Albert Mondago, the son of the lead character, and while he wasn't the star, that honor went to Jim Caviezel. It was Henry's first taste of real Hollywood exposure. The movie may not have set the box office on fire, but it left Cavill on the radar of directors and producers. More importantly, it gave him proof that he could stand on the big stage. And yet, here's the cruel twist. Every step forward seemed to come with 2 steps back. While Cavill was clawing his way into the industry, fate kept dangling opportunities in front of him, only to snatch them away at the last moment. It's one thing to struggle in obscurity. It's another to come this close to roles that could change your life, only to lose them again and again. That cycle, tiny victories, crushing near misses, is what earned Henry Cavill the reputation of being Hollywood's unluckiest actor. And the first of those near misses was just around the corner. Because while Cavill was proving himself in modest films, Hollywood's biggest franchises, Harry Potter, James Bond, Superman, were circling. Roles that could have turned him into a global star overnight were within reach. And one by one, they slipped away. If Henry Cavill's early years were defined by determination, then his 20s were defined by heartbreak, the kind of heartbreak that doesn't happen in love, but in auditions. Again and again, he found himself standing at the very edge of stardom, only to have it ripped away at the last moment. The first sting came with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, 2005. Cavill auditioned for the role of Cedric Diggory, the handsome and heroic student who would play a pivotal role in the story. He was a strong contender, but at the last minute, the part went to another rising star, Robert Pattinson. For Cavill, it wasn't just losing a role, it was losing the chance to step into one of the biggest franchises in cinema history. And the irony? That wouldn't be the last time Pattinson would steal the spotlight from him. But losing Cedric was only the beginning. Around the same time, Cavill nearly became James Bond. Imagine it, a 22-year-old Cavill, dashing, chiseled, and British, stepping into the tuxedo of cinema's most iconic spy. Director Martin Campbell and the producers of Casino Royale seriously considered rewriting the script to fit him. At one point, insiders said it was down to just 2 names, Henry Cavill and Daniel Craig. In another world, Cavill might have been the face of Bond for an entire generation, but Hollywood had other plans. Producers ultimately decided Cavill was simply too young. They wanted Bond to look like a man who'd lived, not someone barely old enough to rent a car. And so, in a cruel twist, Cavill lost the role not because of talent, but because of his birth date. Daniel Craig went on to redefine Bond, while Cavill was left to wonder what might have been. Then came Superman, or at least, what should have been Superman. Before Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, director Bryan Singer was casting for Superman Returns, 2006. Cavill was among the top contenders. He came achingly close to donning the red cape years earlier than he eventually would. But once again, the role slipped away. Instead, it went to Brandon Routh, a decision that proved disastrous when the film failed to ignite the box office, stalling Routh's career. In hindsight, Cavill may have dodged a bullet, but at the time, it was another crushing reminder that Hollywood seemed determined to keep him at arm's length. And then came the one that still stings for many fans. Twilight. Author Stephen E. Meyer, who wrote the novels, admitted she had Cavill in mind when she created Edward Cullen. To her, Cavill was the perfect Edward, the mysterious, impossibly handsome vampire. She lobbied hard for him, but by the time the movie was ready to shoot, the studio decided he was too old to play the eternally 17-year-old vampire. And who swooped in to take the role? Once again, Robert Pattinson. At this point, Cavill wasn't just missing roles, he was watching the same rival beat him out. Twice. For career-defining parts, Pattinson's path skyrocketed, from Hogwarts to the glittering success of Twilight, eventually leading to The Batman. Meanwhile, Cavill was left grinding out auditions, wondering if he was destined to be Hollywood's perennial almost. This string of losses earned Cavill the nickname that still follows him today, the unluckiest man in Hollywood. Think about it. Harry Potter, Bond, Superman, Twilight. These weren't just roles. They were golden tickets. Most actors spend their lives hoping to be considered for one of them. Cavill had been considered for all four, and lost each one. But here's where his story takes a fascinating turn. For most people, that much rejection would be the end. They'd pack up, go home, and call it bad luck. Cavill didn't. He kept showing up, audition after audition, believing that one day, his break would come. And that's what makes this chapter so important. Because Henry Cavill's story isn't really about luck, it's about resilience. Hollywood kept slamming the door in his face, but he never stopped knocking. And eventually, his persistence paid off in an unexpected way, through a series that would finally make people notice him. The Tudors. By the mid-2000s, Henry Cavill's resume looked like a patchwork quilt of minor roles, small parts in films like I Capture the Castle, 2003, horror projects such as Hellraiser, Hellworld, 2005, and the romantic flop Tristan and Isolde, 2006. None of these titles set the box office on fire. To Hollywood, he was just another handsome face trying to find a place in a business that had already burned him with rejection after rejection. But then came a lifeline. The Tudors. Premiering in 2007 on Showtime, The Tudors wasn't just another period drama. It was steamy, scandalous, and unapologetically indulgent in its depiction of King Henry VIII's court. Cavill was cast as Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk, best friend to the king, loyal courtier, and, perhaps most importantly for the show's success, a seductive figure whose storylines often landed him in the bedrooms of noble women. For Cavill, this was the turning point. Suddenly, he wasn't just another actor on the sidelines. He was front and center, week after week, in a series that caught both critical praise and audience attention. The show earned Golden Globe and Emmy nominations. But more than that, it gave Cavill exposure on an international scale. People who had never noticed him in small films now knew his name. By the time the series wrapped in 2010, Cavill wasn't a household name. But he was no longer invisible. He had fans. He had credibility. And most importantly, he had momentum. Hollywood might still call him unlucky, but with each project, Cavill was proving he wasn't going away. And then came the role that would demand more from him than anything before. A mythic epic called Immortals. For Cavill, this wasn't just another chance. It was a test of whether he could transform his body, his career, and his destiny into something larger than life. By 2011, Henry Cavill was ready for something big. He had visibility from the Tudors, discipline from years of grinding in auditions, and a body sculpted by relentless gym sessions. But Hollywood wasn't offering him James Bond or Twilight. It was offering him a shot at something even bigger, the chance to become a hero carved into pop culture itself. That chance came with Immortals, 2011, directed by Tarsem Singh. The film was visually striking and demanded a Herculean transformation from Cavill. He spent months training like a man possessed, often paying for his own coaching when the studio's financing wavered. By the time cameras rolled, Cavill's physique was so extreme that reviewers joked he looked more like a statue than a man. Immortals wasn't a masterpiece, but it made over $220 million on a $75 million budget and gave Cavill something priceless, proof he could carry a blockbuster as a leading man. And then came the role that would change his life forever. When Warner Brothers began casting for Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, 2013. Cavill was on the short list, this time. Unlike Bond or Superman Returns, luck was finally on his side. Snyder later said Cavill was the only actor who managed to look powerful, not silly. In the Superman suit during screen tests, even better. Cavill wasn't just physically perfect for the role. He carried himself with a mix of humility and intensity that captured what Snyder envisioned for a modern Clark Kent. There's a famous anecdote from that casting process. Cavill almost missed Snyder's call, offering him the role because he was too busy playing World of Warcraft. That story went viral years later, cementing his image as Hollywood's most relatable gamer. But beneath the meme was a reality. Cavill was about to take on the biggest responsibility of his career. When Man of Steel hit theaters, the expectations were sky high. Superman wasn't just a role, it was a cultural mantle. The film grossed $670 million worldwide. Impressive. Though not quite at the level of Marvel's juggernauts like the Avengers. Critics were divided. Some loved Snyder's darker, more grounded take on Superman. Others argued the film stripped the character of his hopeful spirit. For Cavill, though, it was a breakthrough. He was no longer almost. He was Superman. Looking back, Cavill's Superman years feel like the perfect metaphor for his career. Moments of triumph shadowed by studio missteps. Personal dedication undercut by forces beyond his control. He gave the role everything: his body, his energy, his identity. And yet, Hollywood's mishandling left him once again asking, what could have been? But if Cavill's story teaches us anything, it's that every fall sets up the next rise, because even as Superman slipped away, Cavill was about to find a new identity. This time, not in the skies, but in a fantasy world of monsters, magic, and gamers. When the dust of Justice League settled, many assumed Henry Cavill's career might fade with it. Superman was tarnished, Warner Brothers was moving in circles, and Cavill risked being remembered as the face of Hollywood's most disappointing superhero experiment. But if Cavill had proven anything by now, it was that he refused to quit. In 2015, while still wearing the cape, Cavill starred in The Man from UNCLE, directed by Guy Ritchie. It was meant to be the start of a stylish spy franchise, with Cavill playing the charming American agent Napoleon Solo, originally. Tom Cruise was supposed to lead the project, but when Cruise dropped out, Cavill stepped in. The film had everything going for it: Ritchie's flair, an international cast, and Cavill finally getting to flex his wit instead of just his muscles. But fate struck again. Despite solid reviews praising Cavill's suave performance, the film underperformed, making just $110 million on a $75 million budget. The franchise hopes evaporated overnight for Cavill. It was déjà vu. Another project with promise that fizzled out before it could give him stability. Things didn't improve with The Cold Light of Day, 2012, or Night Hunter, 2018, both of which bombed critically and commercially. Even when Cavill worked hard, the box office didn't always reward him. Hollywood seemed unsure what to do with him. Was he the next James Bond type? A muscle-bound action star? Or something else entirely? And yet, Cavill kept showing up in surprising places. In 2018, he starred alongside Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible Fallout. Here, he wasn't the hero but the antagonist, August Walker, the CIA agent who famously reloads his fists mid-fight in one of the most viral action scenes of the decade. Audiences loved him. Even critics admitted Cavill brought weight and menace to the role, proving he could do more than play square-jawed heroes. For once, he wasn't overshadowed by Cruise. He stood toe-to-toe with him. Still, his biggest post-Superman transformation came not on the big screen, but on Netflix. In 2019, Cavill became Geralt of Rivia in The Witcher. At first, Netflix didn't even want him. Executives thought he was too clean-cut, too much of a Greek god to embody the grizzled monster hunter of Andrzej Sapkowski's novels. But Cavill refused to take no for an answer. He pushed for the role, citing not just interest, but obsession. He had read all the books, played the CD Projekt Red video games for hundreds of hours, and could recite Geralt's lore like a scholar. In a clever move, Netflix leaned into that obsession. Cavill wasn't just Geralt. He was marketed as the ultimate gamer-turned-actor, someone who built his own PC, painted Warhammer minis, and spoke about lore with genuine passion in an industry full of polished PR machines. Cavill came across as authentic. That authenticity worked. The Witcher launched to strong viewership, drawing in not just fantasy fans but gamers who felt Netflix had. For once, cast one of us. For Cavill, the role was a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it revived his career, giving him a loyal fan base that adored his portrayal. On the other, it reignited old frustrations. By season 2, Cavill was openly clashing with showrunners over creative decisions. He wanted fidelity to Sapkowski's source material. They wanted looser, more Hollywood-friendly adaptations. Cavill, the lifelong fan, refused to watch Geralt's world twisted into something unrecognizable. By 2022, the tension boiled over. Cavill announced he would leave The Witcher after season 3. His replacement? Liam Hemsworth. Fans were outraged, many threatening to quit the show entirely. For them, Cavill wasn't just playing Geralt, he was Geralt. Losing him felt like betrayal. And yet, Cavill walked away with dignity, framing his departure as a matter of principle rather than ego. He refused to be part of a project that didn't respect the very stories that inspired it. This decision revealed something deeper about Cavill. He wasn't chasing fame at any cost. He wasn't desperate to stay relevant by clinging to roles he no longer believed in. Instead, he was willing to gamble on himself, to step away and trust that something better was coming. Of course, not every project in this era was a hit. Apple's Argylle, 2024, flopped hard, despite an all-star cast. The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare struggled to find its audience. Once again, Cavill's career seemed like a strange balance of wins and losses. But the key difference now was this. Cavill had cultivated an identity outside of Hollywood. Fans didn't just see him as Superman or Geralt. They saw him as the gamer who stayed up late building PCs. The Warhammer nerd excited to paint figurines. The down-to-earth guy who grilled steaks and loved his dog. That relatability kept his fan base loyal, even when his projects stumbled. And soon, Cavill would find a new project that connected those worlds. A dream collaboration involving his personal passion, Warhammer 40,000. But before we get there, one more chapter of reinvention awaited him, stepping out of the cape and the white wig to show Hollywood that he could succeed not as a Greek god, but as a regular guy who just happened to be one of the hardest working actors alive. When Henry Cavill left The Witcher and lost his role as Superman, many thought his career would hit rock bottom again, but instead of retreating, Cavill chose to reinvent himself. What makes Cavill special is that he doesn't need Hollywood to paint an image for him. He lets the audience see the real him, a hardcore gamer who builds his own PC, has been a Warhammer fan since he was a kid, loves grilling steaks and spending time with his dog, in a world filled with glossy stars. That authenticity sets Cavill apart. This authenticity also opens up big opportunities. Amazon is partnering with Games Workshop to bring Warhammer 40,000 to the screen, with Cavill both starring and producing. For him, this isn't just a role, it's a childhood dream come true. He's also attached to Highlander, directed by Chad Stahelski, John Wick, and Voltron, projects that promise to bring diversity rather than pigeonholing him as a muscle-wielding hero. What's noteworthy, Cavill is no longer seen as a Greek god, but as a normal, approachable man. This helps him to be more sustainable in the eyes of the audience. New roles require not only appearance, but also depth and personality, something Cavill has increasingly affirmed. Of course, not every project is a success. Argylle and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare both flopped at the box office. But unlike in the past, audiences didn't see it as the end. They still supported Cavill, because they saw him no longer defined by failure, but by perseverance and genuine passion. And that's perhaps the most important turning point. The man once called Hollywood's unluckiest star is now rewriting his destiny, no longer waiting for luck, but creating his own, with Warhammer, Highlander, and personal projects. Cavill is finally stepping into a world he truly belongs to. When Henry Cavill left The Witcher and lost his role as Superman, many thought his career would hit rock bottom again, but instead of retreating, Cavill chose to reinvent himself. What makes Cavill special is that he doesn't need Hollywood to paint an image for him. He lets the audience see the real him, a hardcore gamer who builds his own PC, has been a Warhammer fan since he was a kid, loves grilling steaks and spending time with his dog, in a world filled with glossy stars. That authenticity sets Cavill apart. This authenticity also opens up big opportunities. Amazon is partnering with Games Workshop to bring Warhammer 40,000 to the screen, with Cavill both starring and producing. For him, this isn't just a role, it's a childhood dream come true. He's also attached to Highlander, directed by Chad Stahelski, John Wick, and Voltron, projects that promise to bring diversity rather than pigeonholing him as a muscle-wielding hero. What's noteworthy, Cavill is no longer seen as a Greek god, but as a normal, approachable man. This helps him to be more sustainable in the eyes of the audience. New roles require not only appearance, but also depth and personality, something Cavill has increasingly affirmed. Of course, not every project is a success. Argylle and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare both flopped at the box office. But unlike in the past, audiences didn't see it as the end. They still supported Cavill, because they saw him no longer defined by failure, but by perseverance and genuine passion. And that's perhaps the most important turning point. The man once called Hollywood's unluckiest star is now rewriting his destiny, no longer waiting for luck, but creating his own, with Warhammer, Highlander, and personal projects. Cavill is finally stepping into a world he truly belongs to.